Hi, everybody.
Hey,
I'm Chloe,
I'm Courtney.
and this is 6 Feet Unfiltered. Today, we're diving into 6 Feet Under, Season 1, Episode 10, The New Person. A darkly absurd death sets the tone for an episode filled with resentment, routine, and unraveling relationships. At Fisher & Sons, the search for Rico's replacement is a disaster until Angela arrives, bringing talent, chaos, and zero filter. Meanwhile, David struggles with loneliness. Nate surprises David by stepping up, and Claire grows closer to Gabe, unaware of what's coming. Ruth gets swept up in an unexpected night out with Nikolai, only to find herself in the middle of some serious personal drama with his Russian friends. Between awkward flirtations and bathroom confrontations, she's once again questioning what she really wants. And in peak Chenoweth dysfunction, Billy spirals, leading to a bombshell from Margaret that reshapes everything Brenda thought she knew. Let's get into it.
I'm not going to lie. This was one of my favorite episodes so far.
Was it really?
Yeah. I don't know why. There was just so much.
It was pretty dramatic, and it was really hard. I don't know what you think, but for me, this one was hard to take notes on because there was so much dialogue that I felt like I needed to capture.
Yes, I eventually just stopped.
Yeah.
There was, I think you'll see like a gap in my notes because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I've already brought up enough shit. This is way more
Yeah.
than whatever.
So I try to like put at least a quick note in there so we touch on everything because I feel like it's important so we understand what has
To bring it all together.
like what's going on. But there is so much in this one, but it was very good. It was action packed, I guess.
Okay, so Jonathan Hanley starts his morning like any other, grumbling about work while his wife cooks breakfast, motherfucker. But today, her patience has run out. Mid-sentence, she swings a frying pan, silencing him forever without missing a beat. She sits down and eats, unfazed by the body cooling on the floor. Later, when questioned by the police, she offers a chilling, simple explanation. He was boring. It's an opening that's as darkly absurd as it is shocking, a domestic moment turned deadly in the blink of an eye in true 6 Feet Under fashion. It sets the stage for an episode that explores resentment, routine, and just how thin the line is between irritation and violence.
Yeah.
I don't mean to laugh at this, but I think it was supposed to
It was a
have
pretty funny death
Okay,
scene.
all right.
I think we needed some comedic relief, especially after the last episode.
Yes.
So they really brought that here.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so the first thought that went through my fucking head was how many wives want to do this to their husbands, and especially in that time of year, or that year.
But like 2001.
Yeah. Or even like the 90s.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
like 90. I mean, today things I think are getting a little bit better, but men, we're not giving you a trophy for not beating us. But yes.
Right. Yeah. I laughed out loud when I read your note because I had the same thought, and that is very on par for our thinking. So very true. And also, I noted it's super interesting to think about how the death scenes tie to the themes of the episodes and the main characters' situations. I had not really given
Ooh.
that much thought before, but in this one specifically,
A new person?
there's
Or what was it
like,
called?
It's called The New Person,
Okay.
but the wife resents her husband, and
Kills
that's
him.
why, and then she like explodes with violence, and there's a lot of resentment throughout the whole episode with
Oh, yes.
Billy to his parents, and I feel like there were more connections.
Brenda to Billy.
Yeah, Brenda to Billy too, and just explosions. Like Billy loses it later on, so, and it's out of resentment. So kind of similar to what we're seeing in the death scene. And then I was trying to think of past episodes if that theme kind of carried over.
I feel like we've talked about this before because I remember having some sort of similar. It might not have been about the death scene, but
We'll have to think more about it and see if we can come up with any other connections.
yeah.
So we start the episode after the death scene, seeing Nate and David in the prep room discussing the death of Jonathan. Nate says, I bet he was abusing her, or he has some weird sexual thing that he makes her do. And David is like, actually, no, all she told the police was that he was boring. And there is a hilarious moment here because Nate is like, oh, the sick thing is I understand that. And David's like, I do too. And then
The look on David's face killed me.
yeah, it was just like horrified, but realizing like,
Yeah.
I do too. And then Nate's like, sometimes I'm boring. And David's like, I am too. And they just look at each other like it was
Oh, fuck,
so
we're
funny.
next.
Yeah. Then Nate suggests that they need to start thinking about finding a replacement for Rico. David's a little offended at first, but Nate very tactfully gets David to come around by pointing out that they can't handle some of the reconstructions for open caskets that they have coming up.
Isn't there a fire too?
Yeah.
He brought up like there's fire victims.
Yes, a lot of things that he's just like, we're not capable of that. And David obliges and says that he'll put an ad in the paper, and Nate goes, it's already taken care of. So I was super proud of Nate here for taking that initiative. He's no longer weaponizing his incompetence, or at least he's trying harder not to. And he says that he scheduled some interviews that afternoon, and David is shocked, but I feel like shocked in a good way at the end of it. Like first he was offended, but then he was like, oh, confused, but
I loved it.
Surprised.
Honestly, my love language is acts of service. So somebody doing something for me that I don't have to think about, I would have had an orgasm right there if that was me and Nate.
Yeah, it was very, I felt that too, watching that and just thinking about the relief that David must be feeling, just having that because huge, big task lifted off of him. And
sometimes just starting the task is the most daunting.
And not having to ask.
I know. Oh my God, my pants are soaking wet.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're interviewing potential candidates for Rico's replacement, and they're all horrible. One guy lets it slip that he was involved in a lawsuit about an unembalmed arm. Another explains that he has debilitating panic attacks. And then we meet Angela, who does great in her interview. She's very personable at first, and David and Nate love her at first.
I always have loved her. And honestly, I thought it was hilarious when David said, I think Nate said,
I'll wait
an hour to call her.
Yeah.
Yep. And he goes, well, we don't want to look desperate. Just find out if she can start tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I love this.
Yeah, it was really cute. So then we see David vacuuming the funeral home, and we break into a dance scene just like Claire's from episode 3 with some fancy male backup dancers, and he's singing, I don't remember the tune, but the lyrics were, I'm going to break out, going to go wild, have my own way. I may break a heart a day. You're alive, so come on and show it. And it's like Broadway musical type singing and dancing.
Is this when he's vacuuming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I pointed out, I truly, only because I sent you that one clip the other
he's
day.
in a band. They're like on Spotify.
Okay. So I wouldn't have thought this if I didn't see that clip of it though. But I'm like, I bet you that's really him singing. And I'm sure it is.
Totally is.
Okay.
And he is in a band now. I'm sure there's a lot of people who already know this, but it's called, they shortened their name to Princess Goes. It used to be a longer name, but now I can't remember what that name was. But he actually got his start before he was ever in film. He acted in Broadway productions. So that's like
he's
part of
multi-talented.
Yes, very.
I love that.
Yeah, he's very good. Then Ruth breaks into David's daydream.
Looking hot, by the way. I forgot to put that in there.
I literally said Ruth looks so pretty here.
It was like really her hair did.
Yeah, she had her hair pulled back or something.
Some makeup on.
Like she just looks so.
She
pretty.
looked like she was really into herself that day.
Yeah, like confident and happy. But she just asked David, like she's yelling like, David, why are you just standing there staring? And I think the message that they were trying to send us with that dance scene from David is that David is feeling like he's not living his life to the fullest. Something's missing.
Clearly.
He's lonely. And it also connects to the death scene.
About being boring.
Yeah.
It does. Because think about what later happens. Oh my God. Okay.
Okay, tell me when we get to what part you're thinking of. So then we see Brenda and Nate walking around Billy's photography gallery show.
Okay, this was fucking gross. Billy literally blew in Brenda's mouth asking if his breath smelled. Like he went in. I'm not going to do it to you because I just ate beef jerky, so mine probably smells worse. But it was like, ugh. And Brenda was like, and I was like, what the fuck are we doing? A puke. I was so grossed out about it.
Oh my God.
And then I love that we saw Nikolai with Ruth at the art showing.
Yes. I was dying when I was trying to.
I've got more icks too from this scene, but they're coming up.
Action-packed scene. Well, I was plugging in your notes that you sent me, and I read Billy really blew in Brenda's mouth, and Brenda really sniffed it big time. I was like, what the fuck
do you remember?
Talking about? It took me a minute to realize what you were talking about.
I was so grossed out.
That was hilarious. So Margaret, Chenoweth is there as well, and Margaret is hammered, and she whispers something in Billy's ear and then says to Brenda, "You can't keep him to yourself all the time," and walks away.
I was grossed out because to me, I didn't know that she was whispering. I thought she was fucking sniffing his head.
That's what. Okay, that makes sense. That was another. Did not know.
It was
exactly
so
what you meant
nasty.
by that
I'm like,
either.
what is wrong with these people?
So you thought she just went up and like.
Yeah, and okay, so think about it this way. You see Margaret doing that shit to Billy, and then Billy's doing it to Brenda.
Yeah.
Kind of, ugh.
Yeah, that's a good point. So then after Margaret says that to Brenda, she walks away, and Nate says to Brenda, "No offense, but your family is fucked up beyond comprehension."
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like Margaret was trying to play on the fact that people often insinuate that Brenda and Billy have an incestual relationship, which is fucked up. But I feel like she was trying to like take that and amplify it in front of Nate.
Yes.
To be a bitch.
Yep. Well, she's testing him. I think
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I brought that up in this episode too. There was just a lot of Margaret testing things that was going on in my head.
Yes, there's a part where you put a note at the same part I did that I was really interested that we did that again. Okay, so
I can't wait to get to that.
Ruth introduces Nikolai to Nate and Brenda, and Nate asks where Hiram is, and Ruth says that he's visiting his son in Portland. I wrote poor Hiram. So obviously people are wondering like, why are you
with Nikolai?
Yeah.
With a Nikolai.
Yes. And then Billy asks Margaret where Bernard is, and Margaret tells him that he's treating a patient who is having a psychotic break, which really upsets Billy. And he says, "That always seems to happen whenever there's something important in my life. I guess that's just typical Bernard Chenoweth behavior, pretentious dick." And Margaret laughs hysterically at that and drinks some more alcohol. Odd.
And I had a note for this one too because it was so odd to me hearing Billy complain about his dad not being there because he's working with someone who is having a complete psychotic breakdown. And he says how typical that is, you know, like you were just saying, bro, like exactly what you did to Brenda and Nate. Mm-hmm. Like when he had that was all fucking. So, and time out. Whether or not Bernard is doing this intentionally, Billy did his intentionally. Mm-hmm. So he's receiving how Bernard treats him as intention.
Yeah.
Like, and he's doing this to Brenda with his intention. I don't know that Bernard was intentionally being
we don't know for sure.
Pretentious dick.
So you're saying Billy's being a hypocrite.
Yes. And making assumptions.
Yeah.
That he just has to unpack a lot of shit.
For sure. But I guess there's a lot of like layers there too, because if it's like an ongoing thing, and I don't know, not that it's okay, but I don't know. They kind of insinuate, or he insinuates that Bernard has been an absent father to him, and that's what he's like.
That's how he feels.
On.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that reality is accurate or not. Like I'm not denying that he feels that way, but I'm curious to see how truthful that is.
Yeah. So Brenda has another awkward encounter with Ruth. She says, "I've never seen you having so much fun. I'm having fun just watching you." And that was kind of weird. I feel like it was just an awkward thing because Brenda didn't know what to say, and Ruth just stares at her. And then Margaret approaches them and introduces herself and asks Ruth who she is. And Ruth says she's Nate's mom. And Margaret says, "Well, that explains why you're looking at me like I took a giant dump on your front lawn." And I wrote down that is definitely something I can see you say.
I'm pretty sure I have said that.
Yeah, I think I have heard you say those exact words. And Brenda is embarrassed by Margaret. And then Margaret spots Dr. Feinberg from across the room, who we find out is the psychologist who wrote Charlotte Light and Dark. And he's there because Margaret invited him.
Of course she did.
Yes. And Brenda says I love the sign. "He's a fucking evil dead fish of a fucking Nazi fuck." So we know how she feels about him. And Margaret tells Brenda not to act so adolescent. And Brenda says, "As opposed to being drunk in public and slobbering all over my boyfriend, who, by the way, is completely not interested." So you were right. Margaret totally was hitting on Nate before when she first met him. That was the vibe there. Mm-hmm. This is just confirming that is her vibe toward him. She's like hitting on him.
Which is odd.
Weird. Yeah. Just gross.
And I just cannot handle Margaret and Brenda's relationship. It's just very confusing. It's volatile. Margaret toxic. Is nut. And there's just so much. I don't understand.
Yeah. Their relationship is weird for sure. So then Dr. Feinberg approaches the group and it's awkward. Margaret and him have definitely banged because
Oh, I didn't catch up on that.
he was like, I don't know, he like took her hand and kissed it and was like, Margaret. And she was like, oh, hello, Gareth. His name was Gareth. So there's definitely some you vibes there. Brenda scoffs and walks away. Margaret asks Billy if his work has a theme, and Billy says, Mother, nothing is more tedious than when you look for meaning in my work. I don't need your fucking approval. And then he pats Dr. F on the shoulder and walks away. But I was kind of proud of Billy there because Margaret was just being a sloppy bitch, and he was just like, fuck off. I don't need your approval. Then we see Brenda and Nate admiring some of Billy's photos on display, and Nate admits Billy's really good, which was a sweet moment. Then the sweetness is cut short when they see a photo of Nate pissing on a wall in the alley, and Nate is super upset and freaks out on Billy. Billy tells Brenda, please tell Nate this isn't about him. And Brenda says to Nate, it's what Billy does. He takes pictures of people when they're off guard. It's a talent. And Nate screams, no, it's fucked, and storms out. Then Brenda says thanks a lot to Billy. So we get some comedic relief right after that from Nikolai as he and Ruth approach the same photo, and Nikolai lets out his signature. Like, I can't even do it. He's like, ha 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 ha. You can do it good. What does his laugh sound like?
I can't. It has to come naturally to me.
I have to like hear it to do it again.
Yeah.
Look, that's your son pissing against the wall. But yeah.
That was interesting. I think that picture looks almost staged to me. I'm sure that was not intended, but it just seemed really staged.
It was a dumb picture.
Yeah. And then I also was wondering, what does Brenda actually feel? Because when she was saying, what did she say?
She was like, it's a talent.
It's what Billy does or whatever. That felt so scripted. Like she had said that a million times before.
Yeah.
And I was like, does she even, I wonder if she's just being that parent that is just repeating themselves over and over and over.
It sounds like they've been in this situation before together where he takes advantage of her and forces her to
conform
side with
to
him.
Yes. And she does seem pretty annoyed to me. And then I think that came out when she said thanks a lot.
Yeah. She said it in an exasperated way. Like, this is what Billy does. It's a talent. It wasn't very emphatic. It was just like.
There was no excitement behind it. And to be honest, I don't think I would care if somebody had a picture of me peeing on a brick wall.
Yeah. I feel like.
I could see that. I'm not saying that Nate overreacted though.
Right. I feel like it might have been, well, Nate probably was a little embarrassed. I feel like you would be less embarrassed by that than his character would. But I also feel like it was a lot of his freaking out was coming from
hating Billy in the beginning.
Billy and feeling like being stalked by him or whatever. Like, you're following me, taking pictures of me.
I thought that picture that he took of
Claire
was going to pop up. Why do I feel like that pops up somewhere?
It does. I can't remember exactly when it does either, but I know we see it. So then Nate and Brenda are arguing at Brenda's place about the peeing pic, and Brenda tells Nate to not make this about him, and Nate's not having it. He says, you don't think I have the right to not be spied on? Which is a valid point.
Yeah, it is.
And they argue about whether Billy is psychotic. Brenda says he's not and that he's fine when he takes his meds, and Nate asks if he's ever done anything dangerous. So Brenda says no, and the only person he'd ever be a threat to is himself. So then Nate asks if he's ever tried to kill himself. And
he never finished the sentence.
No, he didn't. But
she says she knew.
Yeah, she started answering before he finished. So she says that, yes, he had, and tells Nate the story about how when she was 18, she went to Europe for 3 months. And when she got back to LA, Margaret told her that Billy had committed suicide, even though he had only attempted and didn't succeed. So Brenda says she was drunk or else it was a Freudian slip. But I feel like Margaret might have just been playing mind games with Brenda, which is fucked.
And I wrote the same thing. We did not read each other's notes.
No.
So that is really cool. I definitely did think, what did I put? Because she's so sick in the head and wanted to see how Brenda would react. Kind of like there's a term for this, like a sickness in your head that it's kind of like Munchausen's, but something
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I should have looked
saying.
that up.
Just like to
Somebody
play
who-
with people to see.
Yeah, like a compulsive liar almost,
Yeah.
just to get to see the rise and
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, funny that we both thought that though.
Yes.
Anybody else have that's listening? If you had a similar thought like this when you watched this episode, let us know.
Yes. And rate us 5 stars, please, because we
5
only have
stars.
3 ratings so far. So
And one of them is me.
yep, and the other one is me. So there's someone else out there. Thank you.
It's probably Michelle.
Probably. Thanks, Michelle. We love you. Okay. Anyway, Nate starts to empathize with Brenda as he does and says he can't believe they pressured her into sacrificing her life for her brother. And she says that she wasn't pressured and that she wanted to stay and not go to Yale because she had gotten a scholarship to Yale or something.
I don't believe
she
that.
mentioned in there. I don't either. I feel like
Even if it wasn't direct pressure, they planted that. His parents are psychologists. They planted the fucking seeds.
and I think Billy was part of the manipulation too.
Oh, for sure. I think Billy is very intelligent.
Yeah.
Ugh, so much.
Yeah, it's weird. So at the breakfast table at the Fishers, Claire pokes fun at Nate for his peeing pic. Nate questions Ruth about Nikolai and also asks David what he did last night. And David says, nothing. And Nate says, Saturday night, what happened to that? And then everyone freezes because he almost said guy, which would have inadvertently outed David to Ruth.
Except for, I think, Ruth caught on. I don't know if
She kind of like looked up. She had her back facing to them, was doing something. Then she
At the
kind of like
counter.
looked up and like caught the conversation, but just let
But
it
then
go.
listen to the last thing she says. I'm pretty sure you'll get
So
there.
then Nate catches himself and says person instead of guy. And David says, I get what you're saying now. They're no longer in the picture. And Nate asks Claire if she's dating anyone. And she says no, she's just been hanging out a lot with somebody. And Ruth asks who it is. And Claire says nobody. And then Ruth tells David she's ready to go to church. But in there, she also said,
You don't have to.
if you're dating someone, but she's saying it to Claire, but I
Yes,
felt like
but she was saying it to David at
Yeah.
the same time because I think she was catching on. And this is the episode that she ends up finding out.
Yes.
So it would all make sense if that was the case.
Yeah, I think you're right. She said, well, if you're seeing someone, then why are you trying to hide it from us like we're all a bunch of lepers or something?
Yeah.
So maybe she hadn't 100% put the pieces together, even though they're laying right in front of her, but she's starting to get there for sure.
She knew something was being hidden from her.
Yeah.
And so she used Claire as her out, even though she really was trying to get
Yes.
it out of David, or maybe just tell David that it's okay to tell me.
Yeah. So then we see Claire and Gabe watching an episode of Full House at Gabe's house, and Gabe tells Claire that there's a little boy next door who doesn't have many toys, so he starts to pack up Anthony's toys that are laying around.
Okay, time out. Did they move? Why does the house look so much different?
I don't know. I feel like it was just a different angle, but that would be an interesting thing to go back and compare.
Yeah,
them
it
side by
doesn't look
side.
as sad and
Well, maybe it was because
distressed.
like when earlier when we saw the house, it was just Vicky sitting in there by herself and she had the shades drawn and stuff. And then when Claire and Gabe were in there, maybe they had the windows open and so it
Possibly.
didn't look as sad.
Interesting, though.
I don't know. But yeah, it
We should go back and look.
for sure. And so they're gathering up Anthony's toys and also just shows how big of a heart Gabe has again. Claire starts to help him pack them up, and then Gabe's mom comes in and asks what they're doing. And when Gabe tells her, she rips the box of toys from them and tells them to keep their hands off of them. And Gabe says to Claire, she doesn't even look me in the eyes anymore, which is so sad. But also I kind of understand, like, from the mom's perspective of
I
not
feel
wanting.
all of it from everybody.
Yeah, she doesn't have to be so mean to them, especially to Gabe. But I get having that visceral reaction of, like, don't touch my son's
And
thing.
grief is so different for everybody, too. I just keep thinking, I don't want to keep thinking about it because I do have kids, but I'm like, how would, it's kind of watching this and analyzing it is kind of forcing me, like, how would I act in her situation? And I don't even have an answer. Like, I don't, so I just, I'm just like, everything she's doing is fine.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't get it. So,
Right.
So you're good. Like, but get some help. Like, I think she needs.
I wish she was being more loving to Gabe because he's still her son too. But
That's hard for me to understand. But again, I haven't been in that situation.
she probably
also blames him.
Yeah, I was gonna say she probably also feels resentment toward him. Oh, it's sad. So then Claire tells Gabe, "Come on, I want to show you something funny," and then they leave. And then Nate is showing Angela the prep room, and we start to see that Angela has no filter and says off the handle things like how she has bad gas from eating calamari last night.
I love her.
Yeah, she was being like, I don't know, just over the top, but talking like how we would talk to each other, basically. But she's on her first day at a new job, so probably not appropriate.
We all have different definitions of professionalism. I will just throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And clearly the Fishers and Angela had different definitions. So we see her working on a body, talking about using a turkey baster to inseminate herself, wearing a pot leaf necklace and a tiny tank top with her thong hanging out of her jeans. Then David walks in and he's shocked by what Angela is wearing and how she's acting. And he tells her they're used to a more professional appearance around here. And Angela's like, give me a break, David. They're just nipples. And says something like, the dead guy isn't going to like tell everyone that my nipples were hard. They're whatever. So then David gives up on that situation and is just like, okay, gotta go. Just wanted to make sure your first day was going okay. And she's like, thanks. I'm a little gassy, but that's not your fault.
Okay. And then Nate goes, it was the calamari.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Calamari last night.
Like they're besties now.
Yeah. She's like, yeah. And then when David walks out, Angela's like, well, he's a barrel of laughs. And
oh my
that
God.
made Nate laugh too, which I thought was cute and funny.
I just really enjoy Angela. I think she's
a you character.
Yeah.
For sure.
She's weird. I think she's misunderstood. And she really, really is. That was my note. Yep. Fucking love her.
Yeah, for sure. So Brenda and Billy now are talking at Brenda's house, and Brenda's trying to talk to Billy about his feelings about her and Nate's relationship. Billy insists he's not jealous of her boyfriend, and Brenda says, oh yeah, well, your behavior consistently communicates otherwise. Billy gets pissed and tells her that she's acting like Margaret and Bernard, psychoanalyzing him. Brenda says, fuck you. You know what you did was wrong. That's why you didn't show it to me before, talking about the peeing picture. And Billy asks
Which
why.
is probably true.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely was doing that to like push Nate away and fuck with his head. And Billy asks why she's making such a big deal out of it. And she says, because I love him.
Ugh.
And then she goes, you're fucking with my life, Billy, and it's not fair. You have to stop. And then Billy goes, or what? And then Brenda freaks out even more. I was proud of her for this, but she yells, God damn it, Billy, what is it with you? You like fucking with my brain like Feinberg? And runs into her room and slams the door. But
pointing out that was the first time Brenda said she loves Nate.
Yeah, that was the first time that she said it, I think, out loud. Because he said it to her before, but she never said it back,
She didn't.
I don't think.
She like turned it into a cute like, okay, I'm not going to say it back, but
Yeah.
I'll make this not awkward.
Yeah. So then we see David volunteering at the food drive again, and he has a weird moment where he imagines a homeless man asking him to give him a blowjob. What did you think that was trying to like, what message do you think they were trying to give us about David?
I think you hit it right on the nail here with that you think it was David is being sexually deprived. I was like, is that Rob? The homeless guy? Oh my God, it was so funny.
Oh my God.
And I was just laughing because I thought this is definitely, I mean, duh. He's probably,
We're seeing throughout this whole episode, David is just like really lonely.
David needs to get his dick wet.
Yeah, in that way. Like he's craving human touch, like we talked about with Tracy Montrose Blair last episode or whatever it was. So then right after this homeless guy situation, he overhears Tracy Montrose Blair on the phone confirming the names of the volunteers for the food drive on Tuesday. And one of the names was Keith Charles.
I didn't catch that, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I thought maybe you didn't because of what you wrote. But David then, after he heard Keith's name, he's like pops out from behind the van. He's like, hi, Tracy. He gives her compliments. He's secretly trying to get intel on Keith because he just heard her say his name. So then Tracy says that she heard David used to go to St. Stephen's and it's a very progressive church. And David responds, yes, they are. And yeah, he did go there. So I feel like he was insinuating that her suspicions of him are correct without having to say it.
Yes.
outright.
So the conversation in another language that just happened was Tracy said, so you're gay? And David said, yes.
Yeah. She still didn't get it through her head 100%. But I feel like that was the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that this was going to happen where Tracy was going to get the blow or give the blowy to David. So
that would have been crazy. That would have been an interesting. I mean, that's not too far fetched for what they would write in the show.
No, but that would, and then I did this face.
Okay.
David's getting a blowy from Tracy.
Yeah. I think he tried to make her think that, or tried to make her think he was flirting.
Yeah, he
with
got
her.
me.
It was a really quick drop. Like
The Keith thing.
yeah, when she said Keith Charles, I mean, you're not really thinking in your head about all of the characters' names either. Like that
True.
wouldn't.
I mean, if I would have heard Keith, my ears would have went
Yeah.
like David's, but I must have missed that part.
It was quick. So then Claire has taken Gabe. Remember, she said she was going to show him something funny. She's taken him to Billy's photography gallery to show him the photo of Nate peeing in the alley to try to make Gabe laugh. And it works, and they're laughing, and they share a sweet moment giggling over the photo. And then Gabe kind of pauses, and he says that he should go home to check on his mom. And then he apologizes to Claire for everything that he put her through, explaining that he never meant for any of that to happen with the guys writing the words on her car and making fun of her, and he was being really stupid, and he's sorry. And Claire says, well, thank you, and then grabs his hand, showing Gabe, I think, that she forgives him. And then Gabe holds Claire's hand to his chest, and they look at each other, and it was just a really sweet moment between
It was
them.
really sweet. It's interesting that it takes, in this specific scenario, a death for the apology to come out. And I know that death can, anytime somebody that you know dies, they don't even have to be close to you. It could be like a high school friend's ex lawnmower guy, lawn mowing company man, and then you just start to think about things, and you're like, okay, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, and then you give the apologies. Like, why don't we just do that on a regular basis?
Yeah. And even with this situation too,
An apology could have been happening months ago.
Right. And it never would have even happened if Claire didn't essentially kind of, I don't want to say force herself onto Gabe, but she's the one who approached him when she found out his brother died.
Yep.
And she's the one who keeps checking in on him. And I feel like he wouldn't have even tried to interact with her. I think he appreciates that she's showing love and care for him.
Because nobody else is right now.
Right. But I don't think he would have done that on his own out of nowhere if she didn't like position herself in his life again on her own.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Just
I feel like he's like letting himself get a little bit more
vulnerable.
Yeah. So then Nate walks into the prep room while Angela is working on a body and simultaneously talking on the phone to a guy she's trying to convince to help her have an hour-long orgasm. She says, well, I'm sorry that men can't have it, but since you guys get to have everything else on the planet, it seems like a fair trade-off. And I was like, yeah, word. But Nate tells her when she's off the phone that David expects a certain decorum while in the presence of people's deceased loved ones. And she's like, okay, I won't do that when he's around.
Hilarious.
Yeah. And
not what Nate meant.
No. And then right after she
takes
said
a fucking phone call.
I was pissed about it. Personal phone call and answers it. And it's Brenda. And they start arguing. So that was kind of thwarting his point he was trying to make to Angela. But Angela overhears them arguing and tells Nate when he gets off the phone to tell her what the fight was about, and she'll tell him what he should say to fix it.
And then I forget what the words that she heard.
Yeah.
Peeing. She heard the word peeing.
Nate on the phone was like, I'm not even mad about the peeing thing anymore or something.
And so Angela's telling him about a guy that used to like to pee on her. And I thought it was lovely that she brought up the water sports kink, because currently I'm doing a whole spiel about water sports in my Sunroom, my membership app. So I was like, this is odd.
Tell them where to find it.
Sunroom is my membership app, and you can find me Climax with Courtney. It's really cool. And we talk obviously about everything in depth. And water sports is an underrated kink that a lot of people have. And it can be anything from just peeing on each other, watching each other pee, peeing in vaginas or butts. Like,
Angela really is a you character, because she didn't just bring up this water sports reference. She was defending it because she's like, oh, so I guess I can't ask about the peeing thing because I knew a guy that liked to do that and I didn't even care. I just thought it was kind of silly or something. Yep. But she was just like, I'm not going to judge you, essentially.
Yes. And I think Nate didn't think she would have judged her.
No.
Yeah. I also have to throw out, there was another thing that came up in this week of the water sports camp. There was a woman who she loved getting peed on. And so she had a few partners. I don't know if it was simultaneous partners, but she ended up starting to really to notice the scent of people's pee.
Okay.
And her current partner was peeing on her. And she was like, that smells a little odd. You should get that checked.
Oh, God.
Turns out he has fucking diabetes. So his pee was smelling like sweet.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was crazy. I don't even totally off topic, but there's your little
interesting.
So it's healthy for you too.
Yeah, I guess.
It's a nice little healthcare check.
Yeah, screener. Okay, so Nate gets annoyed with her after that and tells her to mind her own business and then leaves. So Ruth is putting together a bouquet at the flower shop, and Nikolai approaches her to thank her for taking him to the art gallery the night before. And she's like, I thought you'd hated those pictures. And he's like, no, it's just that I don't like them. That's all.
Which there is a difference, to be fair.
And he's like, but it was nice to be spending time with you. And then Ruth asks Nikolai if he'd like to go to dinner with her sometime. And he asks if it's like a date. And she laughs and says, of course not. And he gets all excited and says, good, I picked you up tomorrow night, 8:00, and skips away. And Ruth is giggling. So,
I love seeing her happy like that.
I know. And she really does seem to feel that way a lot with Nikolai.
Mm-hmm.
So then Gabe is at school talking to Andy by his walker and is telling him to stop asking him because he doesn't want to go to the party that Andy was inviting him to. And Andy's like, okay, fine. I was only inviting you to be nice. Nobody even wants you there because you've been acting so fucking weird lately.
Which is weird. That's a weird thing to say to somebody who's
Andy has not had any redeeming qualities whatsoever. So then Claire walks up to them and says, Gabe, we need to be someplace. And Andy's like, get lost, Morticia. And Claire retorts, shut up, peanut testicle. And that makes Gabe laugh. And then Andy storms off after he tells them both to fuck off. So go, Claire. Then Claire asks Gabe if he wants to hang out with her over the weekend. And he says he can't because he has to go to visit his dad and ask for money for his mom. And Claire offers to go with him. And he says, okay, meet me by the gym. Yeah, it was reluctantly. I feel like he did. It was weird. It was like reluctant because, well, for reasons that we'll talk about in a little bit, but also I felt like he did he wanted what he was saying to be real, but like,
and even though he knew it wasn't going to be.
Yeah. And in a real if that would have really been what he was doing,
happy about it.
He would have been happy to be with Claire and do that, but he knew, so spoiler alert, but he's not actually going to see his dad. But yeah, then when he walked away, he kind of had this foreboding look on his face, and Claire had skipped away all excited and happy.
Just sad.
Super, super sad. So then we see Dr. Feinberg walking into his office, which has been destroyed, and the words Nathaniel and Isabel are spray painted on the walls, and all his files are all strewn about everywhere. His office has been completely ransacked.
Then we see Billy ripping up Feinberg's case files and throwing them in the Chenoweth's pool. Margaret and Bernard walk out to Billy, assuming that he is having an episode over Bernard missing his opening. Billy screams at them, and when Bernard realizes that he has the case files, Billy explains that he found every piece of data that he had on Brenda and destroyed it. Margaret tells Bernard he's off the hook because it has nothing to do with his missing Billy's opening. Billy screams at them to stop talking about him like he's not there, which that would annoy the shit out of me too.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not and never have been.
Yeah, I accidentally put your face there, but that's okay. But he said, this is when Billy starts to spiral.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. This is Chloe's note. Okay. Then you scroll down to the bottom, and this is mine.
And it says Billy's meltdown. Yikes.
So I could put, that's what I'm reading. I'm like, I don't think I put all those words on there.
Right. I thought maybe that
But she put my face by it. It's a whole thing.
But that's okay. So basically they're there, and Billy's freaking out at the Chenoweths, and they come out to the pool and they're asking him what's up. And he'd said to stop talking about him like he's not there. But then he has this line and he says, even though I'm not and never have been.
I know, that was freaky.
It was so eerie. And I wrote down, I wonder if this is him hinting at experiencing like derealization.
Yes.
Which is
like disassociation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that it was eerie is a really good word for that, because they just really kind of slipped that in, but it hit hard. So then Bernard is trying to convince Billy to tell them what's wrong, and he says, there's nothing wrong with me. No, I didn't sell my daughter to some smug star fucking psychiatrist so he could pick her apart like a goddamn cadaver and turn her into shit and garbage just like everything else you touch. So Margaret tries to interject, and he cuts her off by screaming, you bitch. You're the fucking nurse. You want to tie us up, lock us in a room, leave us to die. Well, you're the one that should die, you and him. You don't get to touch the children. And I just put this together in my head just now as I read that. But when he says, you're the nurse.
Yeah, I didn't understand
I
that.
think that he's talking. Didn't they say when Bernard and Margaret had Nate over for dinner that one night, didn't they say that the Nathaniel and Isabel books were about like there was an evil nurse character in there or something like that?
Oh.
So I feel like he's really, and he wrote Nathaniel and Isabel on Dr.
The
Feinberg's walls. So I think if I'm right, I'm not 100%, but I feel like there was a reference to a nurse. So I feel like he's saying, you're the worst of them all. Like, you're the evil nurse, and I'm Nathaniel, and she's Isabel.
Okay, this could also tie into thinking that Margaret created that chaos. Like, she did her Freudian slip to Brenda. Mm-hmm. So this is like all making sense as a diagnosis for her of whatever the word is that I'm trying to think of, being somebody, like basically she's somebody that likes to create the chaos and then just kind of watch the things happen.
Yeah.
So if she,
like a manipulator, like a master manipulator,
yes,
but like all in
there's
a bad
a
way.
word for it. I cannot think of it.
I know what you're saying. I don't know the word either, but yeah. You're right.
So if she is the nurse, then that would also make sense for all of the other things. Whoa.
That's really interesting too. Earlier that you said it's like Munchausen, but not.
Yes.
Because in this situation, if it was like, I mean,
she would be making her
picture
sick.
of a nurse. Yeah, that's weird. But I think it is like.
And it's not Munchausen's by proxy, which would be making somebody else sick. It's like
something connected to that though, or like similar.
Yeah.
So he's like, you're the one that should die, you and him. You don't get to touch the children. And then Bernard walks away saying, I refuse to be an audience for this. And Margaret sits down with an extremely despondent look on her face, as if Billy had really hurt her by what she said. But I was going to ask you, I wonder what part of his spiel do you think struck her like that? Because do you remember when she like sat, she just looked like she just had been like punched in the stomach and sat down and like looked off in the distance.
Yeah. There was obviously truth to what Billy was saying. Mm-hmm. And so I think that might have.
Maybe like just she wasn't expecting to be forced to confront that about herself in that moment, or didn't realize how in tune to her shenanigans Billy actually was. But now he's kind of like letting it out, whatever.
And he's also feeling very intensely right now too. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that he's saying is probably true. There's definitely truth behind it, but there's also anger. Mm-hmm. So it's hard.
And probably new connections in his brain. Maybe. So we're back in the prep room and we see Angela and David working on bodies next to each other. And while Angela talks about her guy's sinewy neck, and she asks David if he likes guys with sinewy necks. And she asks David about his dating life, insinuating that she knows that he's gay. She says, what kind of guys do you like?
Well, first she insinuated that he was single. She mentioned that he was single first. And then at the end of it was like, basically, oh, I know, not only do I know you're single, but I know that you're gay as well.
Yeah. She was like, what kind of guys do you like? And David's like, what? Asks her what makes her think that he likes men. And she's like, oh, please, let's not play that game. Mm-hmm. And that really pissed David off. Because
yeah, why did it piss him off so much? Because he ran upstairs and was like,
yeah,
we need to fire Angela.
Yeah, he didn't like that she was telling him about himself.
They're uncomfortable with her for their own reasons.
Yeah.
And I think I see nothing wrong with what Angela's doing.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to pull out or bring to the surface, I think, by putting her character in there. Somebody who is really comfortable with who they are.
That's what they can't handle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we see David, Nate, and Ruth at the dinner table, and David saying, I think we should fire her. Nate's agreeing because remember, she pissed Nate off earlier about asking him too many questions. They're explaining to Ruth that she's a little hard to take. And Ruth says, sometimes people are hard to take, but only because the first side they present to you is annoying or aggressive because they're nervous. And it's only after you spend some time with them that you realize maybe there's another side to them that's worth knowing.
Yeah. So she's describing Nikolai here.
She looks at David and Nate and she's like, or not, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And they give each other a look. But I said literally the same thing. I think Ruth was speaking on Nikolai when she said that because that seems to be, she seems to do that a lot.
Yes.
Like she'll just say things about her own situation without really realizing it. And then she doesn't make sense to anyone she's talking to, but then.
But it also kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was just too descriptive.
It is applicable to this situation too.
Yeah,
and
she
I
just
think that is
described
true
it too
about
much.
Angela. Like essentially she is a good person who has a lot to like about her.
Oh, yeah.
And I think us as the viewers can see that because Angela, she might be abrasive, but she's very kind and empathetic and non-judgmental. So yeah, it's interesting to see that. But she was, I think, in her brain thinking of Nikolai. And then Claire walks in and apologizes for being late and tells everyone that she's going to an astronomy overnight thing for school the next night. And she puts David and Nate on the spot to cover for her, saying that they both did that activity, just like what happened for the Sierra Crossroads program when Nate vouched for her.
Which was a real thing.
Yeah, that was real. And this time Claire's totally making this up.
But there was no winking. It was just like, fluid.
I'm going to say this and you better have my back. But luckily for her, her bros got her back. And they said that they did do this when they were in school too. So Ruth agrees to let her go.
They were talking about the astronomy thing. And so I basically put the same notes as you, just very much briefer. That's not a word either. But I'm also wondering, is Pluto a planet again?
I looked that up and I was trying to find out the dates that Pluto was like exiled and then
back and then. But okay, I think it's out again.
I was getting confused because this was 2001 and they were saying that not a planet in their conversation because she said she was doing the astronomy thing. And then I looked online and it said that Pluto was named not a planet, like reclassified as a dwarf planet in 2006. So was it?
They probably were talking about it. Maybe you have to go through like votes and stuff, like through like the Senate and the
Congress. Took like 6 years.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
That's what we had to worry about back then.
That was our biggest concern about Pluto. And then they took it. I think they took it back. I don't think
they must have, because it said it happened in 2006 and this was like 5 years before. I don't know. We don't know how that works, but
if anybody knows for sure, drop it in the comments.
Let us know. Educate us, please.
Yes.
So Margaret and Bernard are talking to Brenda at their home, explaining what happened earlier with Billy. And they say that Gareth, Dr. Feinberg, isn't going to press charges, but they try to convince her to agree with them to have Billy committed for undergoing shock therapy. Brenda strongly disagrees and tells them they can't have him committed unless he does something dangerous. And they try to convince her to try to convince Billy. And she says, fuck you both. You're out of your minds, and walks out.
I don't blame her. And that whole conversation just happened, I think, too fast. And there was just so much going on. And I also was pointed out that the shock therapy was interesting. I swear recently I read this, that it's actually not as crazy as you think.
It
sounds really bad.
Specific to like reference, but I know that I have heard stuff about that too, that it like works for people sometimes.
Yes, and for
Same
other
with
things
lobotomies.
Too. I'll have to look into that one.
But I wouldn't recommend, but like they're obviously lobotomies like are not, I don't think they're a thing anymore, but there were when lobotomies were like a huge thing in like modern medicine, like I don't know, 100 years ago or even less than that. It really worked for some people.
Oh, I'm sure. And I think that the very scary version of shock therapy probably worked for people too.
Yeah.
But nowadays they can do shock therapy that's not
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not like Clockwork Orange shit or whatever.
Yeah. No, I think that there's a more humane approach,
which might be like, it's an interesting thing to point out, because that's something that watching this show 20 years later, over
it
20
probably
years later,
was not
gets lost in translation, because that's
as things adapt and whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll
have to look into that too. So then Angela walks into the kitchen at the Fishers to eat her lunch while Ruth is sitting in there explaining that David told her to eat upstairs after she got beet salad on someone's wig. But she got it out. She got it out. Then Angela compliments Ruth's hair, which Ruth seemed to appreciate, but Angela proceeds to make her uncomfortable by saying, I don't want to be one of those menopausal women who goes all dykey with a butch haircut. And then she asks Ruth about her boyfriend Nate had told her about, Hiram, to which Ruth responds, well, he's not exactly my boyfriend. And Angela asks if it's just hot sex, which sends Ruth over the edge, and she tells her she does not want to discuss her personal life. And I wrote here, I feel like Angela is autistic or something.
Oh, yeah, she probably is.
I feel like she's struggles with reading
The room.
Yeah, or like, I don't know.
Social
cues.
Yep.
Yes, definitely.
And it's also possible that she just doesn't care. And it's also possible that there's a combination of those.
Yeah, I think so, probably. Because I think at the end, well, I don't want to spoil anything yet, but I think she does, like, I don't think she likes the outcome of ultimately what happens at the end of the episode. So I think she does care.
Yeah.
But I think that,
yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. She just like doesn't, it's just like she doesn't realize in her head that other people are not okay with talking about sex and farts and peeing on people.
So does she have to change who she is? Like, I don't
know.
I'm having a hard time
I guess she's
siding
just
with anybody but Angela in this episode.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think she's just not a good fit for which is too bad because she was really talented.
And honestly, she would have been a good fit because Nate and David are both weird as fuck too.
Yeah.
Like
I can understand though being like, I think I would get annoyed of her, not because of the topics that she's bringing up, but just like going from having this kind of, I don't want to say peaceful, but quiet workspace that they're used to just constantly like having all her fucking candles everywhere. And then her constantly asking in your ear about your sex life and all this shit. Like, I can see myself getting annoyed at her extroversion, I think, more than her topics of conversation. But that's also coming from, I mean, I'm not like a 35-year-old man working in that setting, so it's also different.
That is true.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that pushes her over the edge.
Right.
Ruth's uncomfortable.
Ruth doesn't
her
like
butthole went like this.
Either. Yes. And then we see Claire waiting for Gabe outside the school, and she checks her voicemail. She has a message from Gabe telling her that he decided it would be better if he went by himself and she shouldn't worry about it, and thank you for trying to help. So that's it, I guess. Goodbye, Claire. And Claire's obviously super disappointed.
And why does Gabe's voicemail sound like that goodbye is forever? That's all I could hang on to. And I'm surprised that she didn't think or feel the same way. But we're also overanalyzers.
Yeah. And you don't want...
I would have called it a missing persons thing right then.
We automatically jump to conclusions. But I feel like I don't know, maybe she was just trying to hold on to hope. And
she probably, she just got let down. So she's got to deal with that in her head first, probably.
Yeah. So then Billy is at Brenda's trying to fix her sink or something. And she's talking to him, asking him if she should be worried about him. And Billy tells her that she doesn't have to worry. He doesn't know what got into him the other day at their parents' house. He was on new meds and they weren't working, but he already seen his doctor. He's already changed his dosage and he already feels more even. So Brenda believes him and gives him a kiss on the head. And then Ruth is in the kitchen listening to music, bopping around, getting ready for Nikolai to pick her up, realizes that one of her sherry goblets has been broken and she's clearly upset. We quickly see David and Nate admiring Angela's work on one of their cadavers, admitting that she does her job flawlessly.
They could eat off of her face.
Yeah, which is just it just emphasizes the point that they're trying to make, that the Fishers cannot handle having a mirror held up to their face, because that's the only reason they're firing her. Well, sorry, they fire her because of this, because she broke the goblet. Oh, I was going to ask you too. So Ruth comes up behind them and accuses them of breaking her goblet, demanding to know who did it. But then they both agree that it must have been Angela. And I wonder if Ruth is upset about the goblet because she says here, this was another really quick subliminal drop, but she got it from her cousin Hannah, which is the cousin we met earlier who they went to visit. And we already saw the dynamics between them of like, how I was wondering, I guess, if Ruth was feeling like,
guilty.
My cousin who she already sees maybe as being better than her, or not better than her, but like they think they're better than them.
Yes.
And she has this gift from her and she can't even keep this gift intact.
So
I
if
feel
Hannah
like
shows
it's-
up and sees that,
Yeah, like making her feel subpar because
I can see that.
you know what I'm saying? I mean, that might be a little bit of a reach, but I feel
I
like.
do think that they put that in there for a reason, because otherwise they could have said Jinginka
Right.
from whatever.
Or it's from Nathaniel or something. That would
yeah,
have
but
been
they definitely put Hannah in there for a reason.
Yeah.
I did
yeah.
catch that. I didn't understand the correlation, and maybe that comes up later too.
Yeah, interesting. So then we see David back at the food drive, and he approaches Keith knowing that he would be there, but pretending that he didn't, and asks Keith if he needs any
I didn't
help.
know that Keith was going to be there either.
There are some things that are hard to pick up
Yeah.
on. So after he asks Keith if he needs any help, he has another imagination moment where he pictures a dramatic scene of Keith rescuing him from an attacker and pleading with him to make love to him, and his daydream is interrupted by Keith asking if he's going to help because he was just standing there staring at him. And then they just ask each other how they've been and start talking, which gives us a little bit of hope there. And Ruth and Nikolai are eating dinner at a Russian restaurant and are approached by two Russian women, Lottie and Irina, who apparently are Nikolai's friends. And they ask if they can join Ruth and Nikolai. Ruth says yes. Nikolai tries to get them to go away, but they ignore him. And Lottie tells Ruth that she's heard all about her. At first, Ruth thinks that she must be talking about someone else, but then she says, "No, you lost your husband. You work for Nikki. You used to fix dead people." And Ruth's like, "Oh, I suppose that is me," which...
That's cute. I love that Nikolai talks about Ruth.
Yeah.
We're seeing a sensitive side of him that we're not even really seeing. We're just hearing about it.
Right. And it was really sweet how this woman was being so kind to Ruth.
Yeah.
Too. So then back at the food drive with David and Keith, David asked Keith if he and Eddie are serious because they had met at the club the last episode. And Keith says, not really, not yet. And then he asked David if those drugs that he saw him taking was a serious thing. David says no, he only tried them once and won't be trying them again. Keith tells him he's happy to hear that. And he says, "You know what that shit has done to my sister? It can seriously fuck up your life, David. I'd hate to see that happen."
And he was angry
Yeah.
when he was saying it.
He was being assertive, and we get to see more of Keith's sister later in the series, but I'm glad they reminded us of her here because it adds another layer of understanding for me as to why Keith was so upset about David doing the drugs at the club.
Because we were confused too. Like, was it the drugs that he was upset about? Was he
Right.
upset that David doesn't act like this with him? Or, yeah, there was a lot of things. So I think that offered a lot of clarity.
For sure. So David apologizes to Keith, and Keith asks about Kurt, and David says, "Let's just say it was a learning experience." And Tracy approaches them and says to David, "This isn't one of your regular shifts. Is there any special reason you showed up here tonight?" And I think she was trying to grasp at straws one last time to see if he might be interested in her. And also, now that I'm saying this, also simultaneously trying to assess the situation to see if he was interested in Keith.
Yeah.
And David just says flatly no. And then Tracy leaves and David asks Keith if he's hungry, to which he responds, "I'm always hungry." So they're just like building us up here with hope for them.
That's interesting.
So back at the restaurant with Ruth and Nikolai, they're dancing, apparently
This place
a little
looks
drunk.
lit as fuck.
Literally looks so fun.
We need a girls' night there.
We should do, I've been meaning to say we should go out for like a night out. Anyway, Ruth goes to the bathroom to collect herself, and then Irina, the other woman, comes and
She's
confronts her
smiling
in the bathroom.
Yeah. And herself. It
At
just
the mirror.
can't stop. Yes.
Mhm. But this woman walks in and looks at Ruth, and she goes, "You fucking bitch. I would like to tear your heart out like you have torn out mine." And Ruth is stunned. And then we cut to another scene. Of course, this one is really choppy too. David and Keith are looking through the closed glass doors of Billy's gallery. And David says that there's supposed to be a picture of Nate peeing on a wall. And Keith finds it and points it out to David, and they laugh. And Keith asks what Ruth thought of the picture, and then asks how Ruth has been. And David tells him that she's dating and it's weird. And Keith says, "People should be with people." Then David says, "Yeah, sometimes people are just too stupid to know it." So I feel like he was
That was
saying,
so, I hate that kind of talk.
just say
Just-
what you mean.
Yes. Put it fucking plainly and quit beating around the bush.
Right. So he was obviously talking about himself.
Yes.
But then he asks.
And like, that's not an apology, just so you know, David.
Right. Then David asks Keith how his taco is, and Keith says it's disgusting, and they laugh together.
It looked really good.
still see more hope. I know. Now I'm hungry. Back at the restaurant, Ruth tells Irina that she had no idea about her and Nikolai, and Irina tells her that for 6 years, every Saturday night, she'd cook him dinner and he'd take her to a movie, and then Ruth came along and he stopped calling. I had to see every goddamn film this Freddie Prinze Jr. does, and what do I have to show for it, she says. Which is funny because around, I don't know, 2001 was like prime time Freddie Prinze Jr. So Ruth apologizes and Irina asks Ruth if she wants to marry Nikki or not. And Ruth says marriage is the last thing she would ever want again. She might like flirting with him, but he scares her and she loves her job because it's hers. She's clearly drunk also. And she would never do anything to jeopardize that, which means I should probably just finish dinner with Nikolai and go home. Then she hugs Irina and she says, thank you. I've had the best time coming to this funny restaurant and having you yell at me in the bathroom. Which was super cute for Ruth.
Yes, that was definitely on par for her. I thought it was interesting that when she was asked about the marriage, that she wasn't more flabbergasted, which tells me that she really does like Nikolai.
Yeah, she was thinking about that too.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too that, and you wrote this down too, that she said he scares her.
Yeah. But she also admitted to flirting with him too. Yeah. So it's like,
I don't think she meant scares her in like a
abusive way.
Yeah, I think it just in like he's so
in a sexy way.
Yeah. So then David brought Keith back up to his apartment, and Keith says, "You realize the entire time we were going out, I was never in your bedroom at night." Then David is like, "Well, you're here now, aren't you?" And he takes off his jacket, walks up to Keith, kisses him.
I've been uncomfortable this whole scene.
It was a very uncomfortable scene. Well, at first I was kind of excited for them, but then it quickly goes downhill.
I was going to say, when they walked through the door, I was. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as David opened his mouth, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. David starts getting aggressive, and that's not him. And Keith tells him to stop. He's seeing someone right now. And David says he doesn't care. And Keith says, I do.
That's so rude.
Yeah. And not even just rude to whoever Keith is seeing, but to Keith.
Yes, it was rude to Keith to not respect his boundary. I don't know. Right. Yeah, it was just...
It wasn't David. It was, yeah. So then David says he doesn't care. Keith says, I do. But David proceeds to try to take Keith's pants off. Then Keith gets aggressive and tells him to stop. And David asks why he came up to his place if he didn't want to do anything. And then...
I think I know why this was so uncomfortable. How many times have we been in Keith's situation?
Yeah.
I can't even count on... Like, I feel like that scenario, I have been in that scenario with my own husband.
Very interesting.
Not in like, oh my God. But yes, like not in like a whatever, but like uncomfortable moments because women are so ingrained in their brains to just, if you don't like not want
to be pressured into sex.
Especially, I see this a lot in married couples. Women think that they have to do X, Y, and Z because they're married. And it's like, you still owe that person nothing. Like I've had conversations with Rob, like, you can take care of yourself. I will not have sex with you if I am not emotionally and mentally into it. Like I don't
want to.
Nope.
Yeah.
I will not have pity sex. And his responses when we have these conversations are like, good. Like, I'm glad. Mm-hmm. So part of me is thinking, do men even know that they are pressuring us? It was just so uncomfortably.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack.
It's also like kind of building off of that too, and at the same time on the flip side, it's interesting to see this dynamic played out with a non-heterosexual
couple.
I
guess that is definitely
because we don't see that, really. We usually see it in terms of like a woman being pressured, but
or that's what we've ever experienced,
right? But that is
hearing you read that. I was like, holy shit, I have definitely...
This sounds familiar.
I've written this down in my notes before. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Keith pushes him off and...
Because he said, why did you even come up here if you weren't going to have sex?
Yes. And then Keith says he wanted to talk to him and see how he's doing and be friends. And David says, I don't want to be friends. I want to fuck.
Oh.
Then... Keith was like grossed out and David's like, can we
just
all
have
were
grossed
sex?
Out.
It doesn't have to mean anything.
Even like you were a dumb fuck and then you took dumb fucks to the exponential binomial.
Yeah. He definitely did not do himself any favors by saying that.
No.
So Keith just leaves and tells him to take care of himself. And David is clearly crushed, I think emotionally and sexually, like, so just like he takes a pillow and like throw, like he's has a lot of pent up frustration.
Sexual frustration and I think embarrassment.
Yeah.
And my note was, this again is Chloe's notes. And then here's mine. This is mine verbatim. David and Keith. Ugh, my heart. David is not well. He is clearly very confused. And I wonder if he's confused because he has so much fog around his sexuality and
how he's supposed to act.
Yes, he doesn't know.
'Cause
But
Kurt
really,
kinda
there is
brought
no.
out, like,
Yeah, I wonder if David's toying with the idea that he wants to be like Kurt, but then he's like,
Yeah.
no, but I want to be like
What
David,
Keith
but no,
wants
I
him to
want to be
be.
like Keith. But it's like, no, David, you need to be you
yeah.
because you were enough. But I think now that I'm saying this out loud, oh my God, stop me if you need to. He feels like he wanted to be what Keith wanted, but Keith suggested that David needed to change, but only the fact that he needs to come out to his family,
Yeah.
not all of the other things. So what David was hearing was totally different than what Keith was telling him way back in the parking lot at that one scene. So I'm wondering if there's just so many. They need to sit down and have a fucking conversation.
Yeah, for sure. A lot to unpack. I feel like, I don't know, I was going to say I feel bad for David, and I do feel bad for him.
I do too. That's not a fun position
this
to
was
be
like
in.
not a good look for him either.
This is a good growing opportunity.
Yeah. Growth opportunity. Okay. So I also hate that my notes are so long. It's like I said, it's just, I feel like there were so many important lines that people said that I feel like I need to include what they said.
This is a necessity too, to keep us on track.
It's hard to summarize what they say, because if their quotes word for word are like, oh my God, that was good, then I don't want to leave it out. But
yes. And if we went by my notes only, we would be like,
we wouldn't know what we were talking about.
Yikes,
but,
what?
yeah.
What part was yikes?
This is a very dialogue heavy episode, I guess. So Nate walks into the laundry room and sees Claire and asks why she wasn't out doing whatever it was that they covered for her for. And she's crying and she says, I just have this really big hole in my sock, which obviously was not actually what was wrong. But Nate realizes that that is her not wanting to acknowledge what is really making her upset. So he sits down and talks to her and says, maybe Gabe just wanted to be alone. Is he your boyfriend? Then Claire says, no, it's just he needs me. For the first time in my life, I felt important, like someone needed me. No one's ever needed me. And Nate says, I need you. And then Claire starts to cry and says, I felt this really intense connection. Now it's just gone and I want it back. I want him back. Is there something wrong with me? Is there something about me that makes me deserve this? And Nate asks, deserve what? And she says, just feeling really close to someone and then having them just disappear like I mean nothing. And then Nate says, Claire, Gabe just went to visit his father for a day. I think you're talking about Dad. Look, we never talk about him, and that's okay if that's what you want, but at some point you're going to have to deal with how you feel. And Claire's like, oh God, can't I just get upset without having to focus on what's really making me upset? And Nate laughs and says, well, it worked for me for 34 years. And he gives her a hug, which was such a sweet moment, sibling moment. But it's also so interesting that Nate pointed that out. And I'm glad that they keep referencing Nathaniel, because it's easy to forget about him and how his death is still impacting all of them. But I like how they keep throwing in little reminders.
I didn't think this initially, and now hearing you read that and then hearing Nate say that he thinks that she's talking about Dad, I actually think that Claire knows that Gabe is gone, like in her subconscious somehow, because I don't think that she cares that much about Nathaniel.
I did have that thought too about it, like not really. I think that there is something there with like she's not dealing fully with her feelings around the death of her dad, but I agree that I don't think this is fully about Nathaniel either.
But I do love that Nate brought that up, because it could be, and maybe they want us to think that. Yeah. But I have a feeling that she has better intuition. She just started asking questions, you know? I mean, there's more that leads up to it. I don't know if they've gotten to the part where his phone's not working now and stuff.
No, almost. But
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just curious if,
I
and
get
we
what
may
you're
never know.
saying.
Claire thinks that Gabe needs her, but I think that she needs him to need her. It feels so good to her to have that necessity. It's like,
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept. And then I wrote, I'm also confused about why it seems like Gabe is gone forever. Didn't he just go to his dad's to get money? And then I realized later, oh, okay, she's referencing her dad. Makes more sense. But now then I had that shift in just a lot.
Every time you hear that conversation, you kind of think something different.
Yes.
Another thing I wanted to say too that I just thought of about this little scene here, this was another moment that I really like connected with Claire and felt like I related to her, feeling like wondering if there's something wrong with you. Like, why?
I feel like we've said that before.
Yeah. Why do you, and not that I think that I should have felt this way or still feel this way about these situations, but being back, I'm putting myself like back in high school, like when you're dating a guy and they cheat on you or dump you or something, and then feeling that like what's wrong with me, like why does this keep happening to me when it's really nothing to do with you, but that feeling of like, why do I deserve this? Like,
it's the biggest thing in the world right at that moment,
right? And that feeling of wanting to be needed by somebody, and I think that too, like when you think about all the other things that I relate to Claire on, about kind of feeling like you're not really a part of the family or whatever, I feel like that's all kind of connects together.
I just had another realization. What if Nate, because you're so right, Claire is not really as close to Nathaniel or the family like David and Nate are. And so Nate's saying, oh, you're just talking about dad. What if that's Nate saying, can we talk about dad?
Yeah. Because we know, and we saw in a recent episode, that he really has a lot of feelings about not being closer to Nathaniel.
Yep.
Wow.
So that, yeah, you're right. This scene just got...
There's a lot.
It was. That one was a big scene.
For sure. Okay. So then...
And I can totally see... I'm sorry again.
It's okay.
I can totally see how you and Claire have that same, like, kind of just...
pathology almost. I don't know if that's the right word, but like frame of thinking.
Yeah.
About things. Wounds, like similar wounds.
Yes.
Or trauma. I don't know.
Trauma and some of the good things. I mean, you're both really artsy too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is weird. It's very weird. And I feel like that's...
And you both always have weed. So, I mean,
hello. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Okay. Love Claire. This is making me love her. Every time I see a scene with her, I just love her even more. And I really am growing to love Nate over these episodes we've been watching.
It's only because you can see me as Nate. So you're like, I can't talk shit about Nate.
You as Nate?
Yeah. Or maybe not. I don't know.
I definitely think of you as like Brenda. I feel like I connect you with her character a lot. But I also know that I won't feel this way about Nate
in the future.
Yeah. So then we really quickly see David on the phone with someone from a phone sex hotline engaging in phone sex.
And he flat out says that he's uncut or Jim is. So I guess we don't know if David's uncircumcised or if Jim is uncircumcised.
Because he also says that he was like 6'5", a boxer.
And at first I was like, I hope you're not meeting up with this guy because he's going to be like real concerned.
Yeah.
That you don't look anything like it.
One time.
Oh, do you really think he was or just making up a bunch of shit?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I bet David is not uncut because why would he be uncut? They feel like a very traditional family.
I think I put that in there because it was controversial and I'm a huge fan of the uncut.
Okay. But do you think he really is?
I don't know.
Like, do you think Ruth, I feel like Ruth would have had him circumcised at birth or whatever.
I'm sure. I think it was a religious thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure they did. I'm pretty sure it was Jewish that didn't.
Yeah.
The guy that I lost my virginity to didn't. And so that was perfect for me because he's no longer with us. So
rest in peace.
Yes. I actually still love him a lot. But it was perfect also for me because he was so proud of it. And then nothing ever grossed me out since.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't think it's something that anybody should be grossed out about.
But if you've never seen one.
Could be maybe shocking.
Very shocking. But I've had like people, I get in this fight with, I hope my sister doesn't watch this. I get in this fight with my sister all the time about how how terrible it is to circumcise children.
Okay.
And she's very for it. And
Yeah.
she's like, it's so much cleaner. It's
Does
so
she
much
have
better.
boys?
No, she doesn't have any yet.
Okay.
She's pregnant. We don't know if it's boy or girl.
Got it.
And I mean, obviously, you do whatever you got to do. But I'm like, just let them be. Just let them be. It's beautiful. It's natural. It's great. And she just can't stand the idea of it. It grosses her out.
I think there's like a lot of people on both sides of that argument.
Which
or
is
whatever.
probably why I put this in here. I'm like, oh, this is definitely
And it was
worth bringing
interesting
up.
too in the context that he said it in, because the other lies that he said about himself were lies that were making him more appealing to this person. So is that like a thing? Like, it's interesting that he chose to say that along with all those other things. Is it like a novelty or something? Like,
I don't know.
know.
In maybe in the gay world,
Yeah.
in the gay community,
We have no clue.
it's possible. I definitely want to do a little deep dive on that, because
Yeah.
it is something I really think is a beautiful thing. Like, I don't know. I'm like, why let's just stop all of it. But that's just me. Meh.
Oh, I was going to say, funny story I just thought of when I was in like, oh gosh, maybe 5th grade. I was having a sleepover with someone not in our main friend group. It was someone I was friends with like before
Was it Kelly?
high school. No, no. But I was really good friends with this person for a really long time. And we had 8 billion million sleepovers in our adolescence. But we were at her house and she lived out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
And she had an older sister. And it was the summertime. And this was back when we still had like landlines. And I don't know where we got the number. She also had older brothers, and they would record movies on like VHS tapes, and we would always watch them. But then a lot of times would be like porn recorded after. That's literally how I saw my first porno, was from.
Was
this
it
person's
somebody
older
else's
brother.
porn, or was it them?
Oh, it was like when they recorded off the TV or
Okay,
something.
okay.
But there was one time where we saw like this number to call for phone sex or something, and we were bored and being dumb, and we called it, and we were fucking around with people, and her older sister heard us giggling and heard we were on the phone, so she picked up the other line and came storming into the room and was like, "Are you?
Did you guys
what
get
did
in
she
trouble?"
say? Are you?" She didn't tell on us, no, but she just was like, "What the fuck are you guys doing? Like,
Oh
get
my
off there. You don't know
God.
who you're talking to. That's dangerous." Which good call. Thank you, big sister.
Yeah.
But
They
yeah.
didn't ask for identification. They didn't do that back then.
I think we were still trying to get through that part, honestly.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think we
Okay.
even-
They would have put the kibosh to that
yeah.
real quick.
Oh my gosh.
Those were the days,
So
man.
funny.
They were 900 numbers, because I used to call them too. I actually got through. My mom saw we had, I used to call them all the time, and she had the bill came in, because it would come back in the bill and you had to pay minutes. But then I was like charging whatever the minutes were to our phone bill. And so she's like, I remember she came out with a piece of paper and there was
Oh
a bunch
my
of these
God.
highlighted things. And I was like, oh my God, I'm mortified. Bednar would do it with me.
Oh yeah, I can totally see that.
And so we ended up getting in
I
trouble,
can
but
just hear her laugh too, like listening to you.
I thought it was fun. I don't know what Bednar thought, but we got in trouble.
She was definitely laughing her ass off, and her nose turned white, and she was dying, rolling on the
My
floor.
mom never told her mom either.
I feel like our parents did a lot of that. Like, I don't
Hush,
really
hush.
feel like talking to your
This
parents.
is too heavy.
And I just thought of another thing too.
Phone sex.
Yeah.
1-900.
Oh,
Pretty
I
sure-
think I was just gonna say that growing up on the Iron Range, literally.
What else are you gonna do?
Actually. Then Nate is at Brenda's and says he doesn't care how late it is. He wants to be with someone. And Brenda's like, someone, that's comforting. And Nate tells her that he wants to talk to her. And I feel like this line was highlighting how important human connection is, and that David isn't the only one who's feeling that. All of them are.
That theme is coming up.
Like Nate was feeling that with Brenda, Claire with Gabe, even Ruth wanting real connection and teetering between Nikolai and Hiram. But anyway, Brenda tells Nate that she doesn't want to talk about Billy. Nate asks what's happening with him and says he's over the picture thing, and she can spill her guts to him because he knows that this has all been really hard for her. And I said major points here to Nate, that he was being very unselfish. And Brenda says that she's too tired, and Nate says, you know what? I love you and I need you, and it's okay to need me too. I want you to need me. And Brenda says, I'm doing the best I can. And he kisses her, on the head and they snuggle into bed together. But I feel like obviously he was pulling that from his conversation he had with Claire. So I thought that was also really sweet that made him realize how important it is to like make Brenda feel needed.
Yep.
Because
and it also shows that he was listening to Claire.
Yeah.
Oh. So my note was, I don't understand how I end up disliking Nate, because I know that I do. Like, I remember not liking him. Like, there was a point in this series where I just didn't even want to see him on the screen anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he is just so emotionally mature, and I love that.
I can't wait to. I feel it's so interesting watching this show, but like at such a slow pace, because I'm used to like putting it on in the background now, but then not paying as close of attention to it. So you get farther ahead quicker.
Or you binge like 8 in a row.
Yeah.
Like, I only watch one and then I'm done.
Right. And so it feels like it's taking so much longer to get to these things that in my brain were like at the very beginning of the series.
Yeah.
But they're not. But I can't wait till
it
we
was
get
day
to them.
4 of the binge.
Yes.
Day 4 of 8.
Yep.
One season a day.
So then David walks into the prep room and Angela's there working on a body and she goes, "Rough night, stud?" And David just looks at her flat in the face and says, "You're fired." And storms out. And then Angela looks really upset and she's like, "Fuck."
I'm pissed. David fired Angela. I thought that was rude. I thought he was rude and had no tact, and
you could tell that
he felt like he was the man of the house right then and there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get out of here, bro.
He did have that kind of attitude about him, but I think that was like just the straw that broke the camel's back when she's like, "Rough night, stud," like when actually he had just been at home having phone sex, so that probably rubbed him the wrong way.
Pun intended.
Yeah. Literally though, because he couldn't even be like, "Yeah, you know, like rough," or "I had a rough night having sex," oh, hot shot. Like,
yeah,
he's got feeling diminished, and she doesn't even realize that she's making him feel that way, but he's feeling like that because he's embarrassed.
Yes, of what his night really entailed.
Yes.
It was rough, but not the kind of rough that Angela was insinuating.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Nate and Brenda wake up to Margaret knocking on her door, yelling for her on Brenda's door. She brought over groceries to make brunch, and Brenda's like, "This is weird. You don't do this." Nate walks out into the kitchen, and Brenda explains to him that her mother has come over to get her to talk Billy into committing himself. And Margaret laughs and tells Nate she likes to make her and her father look like monsters. Brenda says, "Well, I didn't do it, and I'm not going to." And Margaret is upset, but she tries to hide it. And then she approaches Brenda and says, "Brenda, there's something that you don't know about Billy." And Margaret proceeds to tell Brenda in front of Nate,
which is weird.
Super weird. Billy never actually tried to kill himself. He actually started their house on fire, so they committed him because he was making a bomb. And he had written violent things about them and her, and he was dangerous, talking about back when Brenda was 18 or whatever. And Brenda says, "You let me believe for all these years." At first, she doesn't believe her, but then she realizes she's telling the truth. And she's like, "You let me believe for all these years that Billy tried to kill himself. Get out of my fucking house, you lunatic." And she tears into Margaret some more. Meanwhile, Nate gets a call from David. But then Brenda says to Margaret, "You know what the really sick thing is, Mother? You have no idea what you've done to me." So I wrote, what do you think she really meant by that? You have no idea what you've done to me. Like, there's a lot of things that it could mean, but what do you think she's talking about there?
I think she put a lot on Brenda growing up as a kid to care for Billy, and then even as an adult.
Kind of making her a slave to Billy in a way.
Yeah.
Because she had just told Nate, I'm just piecing this in my brain right now, but she had just got done telling Nate about how she stayed because
for
of
herself.
Billy. For herself, but the catalyst for that, her staying and not going to Yale, was that Billy had this episode, and she basically insinuating like she loves him so much and she chose to stay because whatever. But I think that now that she's finding out this information, that Billy didn't actually try to kill himself, he tried to essentially kill all of them, even though she wasn't home. I feel like she might be saying to Margaret here, essentially, if I would have known the truth back then, I wouldn't have spent all these years of my life catering to Billy like this because I was worried about him hurting himself. Because
I don't think that's the case.
What do you think?
I guess I'm just curious what the difference is. Like, what is the big... So he either tried to kill himself or he tried to kill everybody. Either way, he's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I need to know more about...
Is dangerous to himself or dangerous to others. But I think they are kind of placing too much of a discrepancy between the two when in reality
They're both terrible.
just as well. Just as bad maybe. I mean, probably is a little bit worse if you're a danger to other people, but yeah, I don't know. So that was just an interesting line.
Yeah, it really depends on how you look at how Brenda is perceiving all of this. Like, would she have wanted to help? Because I think she still would have wanted to help Billy if she thought he was
right. We don't know how much, because Brenda says she made all these choices on her own, but we don't know exactly how much of that is true and how much is like a responsibility she feels.
Yes. Okay, so then I'm writing, wow, Billy never actually tried to kill himself. I definitely think Billy is dangerous. I'm not sure what I would have told Brenda if I was her mom. Like, when I wrote that, I was talking about back then.
Yeah, you don't know if you would have told her the
whole
truth or not. I don't either.
Because it's like, if you're going to tell somebody something that bad, you might as well just tell them the truth. That's kind of what my brain was thinking, but I don't know.
I think that I would have maybe not told her either of those options and just said he needed to go away for a while or something. I don't think there was a reason.
Was she older?
No, I guess she was 18, so she was an adult. So maybe
I probably would have just told her the truth.
Yeah. Which it sounds like that's what Brenda.
But I don't trust a fucking thing Margaret says or does anymore.
No.
Part of me is like, was there really a fire?
Yeah.
I don't know.
She's a very non-trustworthy, but also a very hilarious character.
Yeah, we can't have the show without her.
Yeah.
And then I just wrote, this is all fucked up.
Yes. So then Brenda tells Nate that she'll call him later, walks out of the house, and David tells Nate over the phone that he fired Angela. And David asks which of the other candidates Nate liked better. And then Nate's like, I got a better idea.
Which we all know is happening.
So, yep. Then we see Nate walking into the prep room at Kroner and approaching Rico, which how can he just walk up in there like that?
I don't know.
That was kind of weird, but anyway, we'll let it go. Then Rico tells Pam, his coworker, to get lost so he can talk to Nate. Then we again cut to another scene and we see Claire walking through the halls at school trying to call Gabe. She's getting sent to voicemail, and then she sees that his locker is open and has been cleared out.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Okay, I still don't know where Gabe is, and I should. But
it's okay.
That's when I realized, okay, Gabe really was saying goodbye. Like, he either packed his shit and left somewhere or killed himself, but I don't think he would have gone and killed himself if he cleaned out his locker. Who the fuck does that?
Yeah.
It's just a lot.
There's a lot. I don't remember exactly what happens, but I know we will find out more details soon. So Angela she got fired. She's struggling with all of her stuff as she's moving her things out of the Fishers. And then Ruth,
damn near studio apartment.
Literally like a huge box full of things. And Ruth sees her struggling and offers to help. And then Angela apologizes to her about breaking her chalice and not telling her.
And I'm like, feeling really bad for Angela at this point. This is what Angela says. I saw that broken glass and I was just overcome with this feeling that it was better just to ignore it, just to pretend that it didn't happen. I get that feeling from all of you here. Everyone is so fragile and can't bear to hear anything. I mean, all I did was try to fix David up with this guy and I thought he was going to kill me. I mean, I've never met anyone who's so uptight about being gay. You know something? I never worked in a funeral home that was this depressing. And then she just walks out, not knowing that she just outed David to his mom. Ruth looks stunned. That was a good one.
That was a big moment.
Yes, it was.
Because now Ruth has confirmation, not necessarily foolproof 100%, but pretty much I think that she can put this together with the
other things that have happened.
Overheard earlier and realized that David is in fact gay. And that was a sad scene too, because Angela was crying as she was saying this all to Ruth, and it's true. I feel like we've already talked about that, so we don't need to get super into it, but they really are just living their lives in this weird mode of not being able to talk about anything. Which is,
they have to tiptoe around shit.
Like
hide and lie and and it's
sad.
Clearly not healthy, because look at the relationships that like David is having and Claire's confused about. My fear is that my ladies will have a scenario like Claire or like we did and not have the proper support or tools or just even those. Sure, okay, yeah, that's gonna suck if they don't have that, but to not even have a place to feel safe enough to just say it out loud makes my heart
You're
fall
definitely
to pieces.
Not building that kind of environment.
No, but I'm like being very conscious about that too.
And I feel like a big piece of that too is just like building a strong foundation for self-esteem at a young age, because I think that is something that comes from your parents.
Yes.
Whether parents want to acknowledge that or not, that's where your sense of self is formed. And I feel like that's how a lot of this type of behavior of being afraid to talk about anything comes from, is when you're brought up in a situation where you don't feel safe or you don't feel like you have your own sense of self to be able to kind of express your emotions and stuff.
Because you're afraid of the backlash or the whatever, or the don't lie to me. I remember this growing up. Don't lie to me. If you don't lie to me, I won't be upset or whatever. But then it's like, yeah, you just grounded me for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I notice those things and I'm like, very aware of that. So when
and aware of how to
somebody
build trust.
does something and I say, if you don't lie to me, if you tell me the truth, I will not be upset. So even when they do that and like it's this shit show, I'm like, that's okay. We're gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
And even those little things over time, then when they do something stupid, like start Kroner's thing on fire, even though we find out that it wasn't Claire, but if it
then
was, Claire wouldn't have told them.
Right. Exactly.
I want my kids to be able to tell me and we'll just figure it out, you know.
Exactly.
And they don't have that in this house. It's very sterile. That's what it feels like. It's like a sterile environment.
Yeah, it's really sad. But it's also like, it's so sad, but I also don't really blame. I feel like it's just such a perfect example of generational trauma.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
It's not Ruth's fault necessarily, because she had her own experiences as a child that made her the way that she is. But then she's passing that on to her own kids, and you can see the cycle. So interesting and sad and real.
Poor Angela.
Yeah. So we're back at Kroner with Rico and Nate. Rico tells Nate that he's unhappy there, and he also tells him that Kroner burnt down the house across the street, and if he were to come back, that they would have to match what he's making there, plus guarantee him flexible hours for picking up Julio and helping with the new baby. Nate agrees, and Rico says, and if I do decide to come back, it's not for good. I'm never going to be a partner, am I? And Nate says, I can't offer you that unless you want to marry Claire. And they laugh, which was kind of a dumb thing for him to say.
Yeah, that was rude.
And Rico says that he can start in a couple of days, and Nate thanks him, and Rico gives him shit for the peeing picture. Somehow he found out about it.
Oh, yeah,
too.
weird. This is a small town.
LA. Again,
I'm just glad he's coming
LA.
back. Yeah. I'm glad Rico's coming back. This is happiness for me. I'm really bummed out about Angela. I wish there was still a place for her in this area.
Can you imagine Rico with Angela?
I think they'd hit it off.
Really? I don't know, because he's so uptight about certain things.
I think he would like Angela better than Pam.
Probably.
I actually think I would like Pam too.
Yeah. What was I just thinking of? Oh, Rico doesn't believe in cremation, and I feel like there's a side of him that I know, I know there's one thing that you're thinking about with Rico that makes us dislike him later, but I'm wondering if you remember another side of him that we'll see soon too as well. And that's what I'm thinking of that's making me say I don't know if he'd be okay with Angela, because she's so progressive. I don't think Rico is very progressive.
Oh.
I think has a better sense of humor than the Fishers, or at least than David and Ruth,
Oh my God. No, okay.
Yeah. Interesting to think about. So then Clara goes
We'll have to revisit that question then.
Yes, I can't wait to get more into Rico's character as we get him back finally. But Claire goes to Gabe's house and asks his mother for his father's number so she can talk to him, and she finds out from Gabe's mom that his father died when he was 4. So he obviously lied to her, and his mom clearly doesn't know where he's at, but he hasn't been home.
And she doesn't care.
No, not very much. She says to Claire, oh, if you should run into Gabe, can you let him know I really don't appreciate his staying out all night? And shuts the door in Claire's face. So Claire thinks back to Gabe's voicemail where he said, that's it, I guess. Goodbye, Claire. And then she's putting the pieces together in her head. She's afraid that Gabe might have or be planning to hurt himself or run away or whatever. So then she starts pounding on the door again. And then that's where the episode ends. So we're left on a cliffhanger as far as what's going on with Gabe.
Yeah.
What's your guess?
Well, I wrote, I hope he isn't committing suicide. However, after I realized that, like, who cleans out their locker before they do that? I don't know. I think he's running away. I want to say something about the military. Like, I feel like I remember him bringing that up or something. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm excited to get to the next episode. So, mate, date, cremate. What do you think of these choices? We've got Dr. Feinberg, Angela, and Pam, Rico's coworker at Kroner.
Okay, mate, date, cremate. So mate, I'm going to tell you mine and then I'll explain afterwards.
Okay.
I'm going to mate Pam. I'm going to mate Pam. I'm going to date Angela and I'm going to cremate Gareth. And the only reason I'm mating Pam is because I don't like Gareth. So it was either kill whatever. And I would love to date / marry Angela.
Okay. That's hard. I feel like I would probably, out of these three characters, probably do the same thing, but I'll come up with different ones to make it more interesting. But okay, I'm going to say I would mate Angela because she's clearly the most like sexual.
Intuitive. Yep.
And she'd be open to anything. And I'm going to marry Dr. Feinberg because
Money.
He's clearly loaded and he's also non-monogamous. So that means that I could be non-monogamous.
I like your answers.
Because it's very clear that Billy said that he like fucks celebrities or something. And then I'm pretty sure that him and Margaret have whatever. So if he's got his own goings on, then I'll figure my shit out and then I'll cremate Pam because she's kind of annoying.
Yeah, I really like your answer better. Okay, MVP.
Ooh, Nate, I think.
I was gonna say Nate. I also think Angela.
Oh yeah.
I gotta give it to her.
She does. She's literally the main character in this episode, and I think that she was a very intentionally written character to bring to light so many things about the Fishers and force them to confront those things themselves.
Angela might be gone, but her presence will forever be in there.
Yeah.
Yes, the legacy of Angela.
For sure. Okay, good call. I like that. All right, that's our episode. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Make sure to like and subscribe. Share us with your friends.
Rate us 5 stars, please.
5 stars.
Give us a comment. Say hi.
Follow us on all the socials.
All right. See you
Have a
next
good night.
week.